On Tuesday, June 23rd, 3 more U.S. states will have their primary elections. The next of these is New York, and the topic of this episode, the 29th in our series analyzing the 2026 congressional primary elections for all 50 U.S. states. New York is the largest state with a population just under 20 million people. This gives them 26 seats in the House of Representatives. This year, none of their senators are up for re-election, which is a damn shame. I would prefer Chuck Schumer to retire now, but we both know that won't happen. Him and Fetterman are among the worst failures in our Senate, but I digress. For the House races, there are many exciting and progressive primary challengers we will discuss in this video. While I wish there was one for every seat, sadly in 10 out of those 26, there weren't options as the candidates are running unopposed in their primaries. 9 of those 10 are corrupt corporatist hacks in the Democratic establishment. Hacks like Hakeem Jeffries, a spineless puppet who has allowed Trump to continue his crime spree with minimal pushback, hasn't supported impeachment efforts against Trump or other criminals in his administration. He also played a role in the Dal-Alam's loss in North Carolina's primary earlier this year. Sadly, he doesn't have a primary challenger. Him and several other Democratic incumbents will simply win re-election because of this fact. For any viewers who have watched earlier videos of mine this year, you may recall that there was a primary challenger running against Hakeem Jeffries. Unfortunately for Vance Bostic in the 8th District, Kiana Biera Anderson, who is running in New York's 4th District, and for dozens of candidates every election cycle. Despite the efforts, they for various reasons don't make the ballot. Too often because they lack the resources and volunteers to collect enough signatures to meet the ballot requirements. Now in the cases of both Kiana in the 4th and Vance in the 8th, they and their teams put in the work and obtained over the number of required signatures to meet the ballot. But it's important to know for those who aren't closely engaged in this, that getting signatures for a partisan primary process is far more difficult than just getting the required number of signatures. The signatures have to be valid, meaning the signer lives in the district and is also a registered party member for closed states like New York. Every line filled and signature must be unique, meaning they can't fill out multiple lines, nor would it be allowed, for example, if you are out collecting signatures, if someone agrees to sign and offers to write in their spouse or roommate's information too, they can't do that. Any suspicion of multiple lines being filled out by the same person invalidates all of those lines. Both party establishments have plenty of lawyers on standby to challenge these signatures collected by candidates and are reviewed based on those factors. Kiana's campaign ended up 142 valid signatures short of being on the ballot. Vance Bostic in the 8th District was short by 186. Now, there's no evidence to suggest this was foul play by the party establishment. This is a legitimate part of the process. Gathering signatures is difficult when the people signing need to be both in the district and registered Democrats, and sometimes people just don't keep track of that and sign the petitions when asked. Had both of their campaigns had the resources for just 1 or 2 more people to help collect signatures, there's a good chance they could have made the ballot, and it's a shame the voters won't have these progressive options this year. But remember their names, and maybe, if society hasn't collapsed yet, maybe we'll see them again in 2028. One other thing to note is several of the incumbents running in New York are also endorsed by the Working Families Party. This is a smaller party that started in New York back in 1998 by a coalition of labor unions and various community organizations. They have built up power in New York over these last several decades, with success in many local level elections throughout the state, and even increasing their presence in other states. When looking for recommendations in local and state level elections, the Working Families Party, the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, and Bernie Sanders' group Our Revolution are among great groups to help you find those candidates in those states. For example, at New York state level, the Attorney General is up for election. I know nothing about that race, but I see the Working Families Party endorse Letitia James, and you know what? I agree. That is who you should probably vote for the Attorney General in New York. Normally, I prefer to agree with the Working Families Party endorsements, but there are some congressional races in New York I just won't be able to agree with. In the 1st, 7th, and 25th districts, there are other candidates running who were approved, and we'll discuss them soon. As for the 2nd, 18th, 19th, 20th, 22nd, and 26th districts, these are all districts where the incumbents are running unopposed. By not approving these candidates, I'm not trying to say they are bad people. Although their voting records are less than ideal and they haven't supported impeachment efforts, when looking at their web pages, none of them have a detailed policy page. I understand the Working Families Party will have their reasons for supporting the candidates they do, and they also have a tightrope to walk in New York. And sometimes to advance certain policies, they will have to support establishment candidates to make it happen. Perhaps if any of you watching have more knowledge of their endorsement decisions, I'd be curious to know more. For the incumbents endorsed by the Working Families Party and are running unopposed, they're going to win re-election. But if they aren't going to put in the time and effort to show support for progressive policies, I'm not going to waste my time giving them a candidate spotlight. But again, if I'm wrong or I missed something important, let me know in the comments. On a more positive note, in the remaining 16 districts, one incumbent is worth re-electing, and the other 15 have candidates worth voting for as opposed to re-electing the corrupt corporatist Dem or corrupt MAGA Republican. But before we discuss those candidates, we'll first review the primary process the candidates and voters must navigate to win, followed by a quick reminder of what it takes to earn secular lefty approval as a congressional candidate. New York uses a standard partisan process, like in most states. The participation is closed. This means to vote in either party's primary, you must be affiliated with the party. For a candidate to win, they only need a plurality of votes. Whoever gets the most votes wins. There will not be a runoff election. If you are a registered voter affiliated with a party and wanted to change affiliation to vote in this election, that unfortunately had to be done back on February 14th. If you are not currently registered, new voters have until 10 days before the election. This means as long as you are watching this before June 13th, there is still time to get that voter registration sorted out to go vote for the secular lefty-approved candidates and support candidates in the state and local level races too. This video should be a component of your political research, not the totality of it. And while I don't have time to research everything, here's what makes a congressional candidate spotlighted in this series worth voting for. I understand why millions of Americans don't want to register or vote for Democrats. For decades, the party and a majority of their politicians have violated the people's trust. They have provided little to no vision on how to make our lives better. They've abandoned regular people in exchange for money from the corrupt oligarchy and the robber baron Epstein class. As I spotlight candidates throughout this series, good candidates will have these policies on their campaign websites. Great candidates will be discussing these policies nonstop at town halls and other in-person events with their communities. While this list is by no means complete, it is my best attempt to list out every immediate priority on one screen. Not every approved candidate is going to agree on every policy, but the more the better. Any candidate who has a decent policy page and has been endorsed by any one of the 10 trusted political groups will be an approved candidate. Occasionally, there may be reasons where I won't agree with a particular endorsement, and I'll explain on a case-by-case basis. Most times, this will happen when there are multiple progressives running in the same race. When looking for congressional candidates to support, here are some important statements and candidate actions to be vigilant of. If a candidate doesn't have a policy page or any social media presence, one of two things tends to be true. Best case scenario, they are terrible at campaigning and just don't know how to message. Worst case, they are being vague and hide from their constituents on purpose. They are empty suits to be funded by those in the oligarchy and protect their interests, not fight for yours. If those candidates do appear in an interview or a debate with other candidates, listen closely to the language and terms they use to discuss policies. Take healthcare as an example. Are the candidate statements vague and only suggest repairing the damage done by Trump and his administration, or are they fighting clearly for Medicare for all, or at least some version of a single-payer health insurance program? We can't trust the phrase universal healthcare anymore. This used to describe plans like Medicare for all, but has been more recently adopted by centrists and liberals to describe their public option plans. Public option would have been fine 10 to 15 years ago, but we can't continue with these half measures that allow the for-profit healthcare system to continue to harm millions of people every year. We must demand a Medicare for all single-payer insurance program from our next members of Congress. One final thing to be aware of, and many of you already are. When candidates only speak about how they aren't Donald Trump or not a Republican, that is not a campaign message, and millions, including myself, are tired of hearing it. This and other vague, empty statements must no longer be acceptable. We cannot keep electing the same establishment corporatists and MAGA fascists and expecting our lives to improve, because it will not happen. If we are going to improve our lives, we the people need to elect better representatives who will fight to make that happen. We will now discuss the candidates in New York who are doing just that. In the 1st District, the approved candidate is Lukas Ventouras. He doesn't have any endorsements from the trusted groups, but I found his policy page to be more inspiring than that of the Working Families Party endorsed candidate. But those are the two choices in this race. In 2024, the Republican incumbent won with 55.2% of the vote. With the right progressive message, a Democrat can flip the seat, and I believe Lukas is the better candidate to do so. In the 3rd, the approved candidate is Danielle Welch. She is endorsed by Citizens Impeachment and the only candidate running against the Democratic incumbent. This is another seat where whoever wins the primary will most likely win again in the general. Danielle Welch, like all approved candidates, is not a lesser evil. She is a candidate worth voting for. Defeating an incumbent is no easy task, but as we'll discuss more in other districts in this video, New York is a state where candidates have been able to beat the odds several times before. Candidates do need some resources to win, but if they have a message and they're out talking with voters and building a volunteer network, they can be just as competitive without the money. If you are a Democratic voter in New York's 3rd, this is the best congressional candidate on your ballot. The 6th District also contains an easy choice for voters if they want to improve this country. They can vote again for the corrupt incumbent, or if they want better, they can vote for Chuck Park, currently endorsed by Track APAC and has a decent policy page. I hope to see other trusted groups endorse him as well. If his campaign and other lesser-known approved candidates in New York can build up some momentum before Election Day, they can still have a chance to defeat these incumbents. The 7th District has an open seat, as the 73-year-old incumbent decided not to run for re-election. A little late, but glad to see them retire. The Democratic field for this seat consists of 9 candidates, but only one that is approved and building the momentum of a winning campaign. Claire Valdez is a Democratic Socialist candidate running on a fantastic progressive policy platform. She is currently endorsed by many progressive politicians and 6 out of the 10 trusted groups: Justice Democrats, Leaders We Deserve, Our Revolution, PALPAC, Sunrise Movement, and Track APAC. I mentioned earlier how the Working Families Party has their own candidate in this race, and Citizens Impeachment also went with a different candidate in this race. And look, I respect those groups and the people who work there, but they're incorrect on this race and made a mistake. Claire Valdez is the best candidate running, and hopefully there will be a few more endorsements from her from the remaining groups to push her campaign across that finish line. This is a district where whoever wins the primary, they will win in November. I hope to see the national DSA organization endorse Claire if they haven't already. The local New York chapter has endorsed Claire, and so far they have kept their national endorsements extremely limited. So far, only 2 congressional candidates at the time of this recording have been endorsed by the national DSA. That is Chris Rabb in Pennsylvania's 3rd District, who just recently won his primary on May 19th. The other is Oliver Larkin, who is running in Florida's 23rd District. I'm not sure if that will change after their map shenanigans finalizes. I'll need to reconfirm that. But back to New York's 7th District, I hope the DSA considers making their 3rd national endorsement, and with the voters' help, send Claire Valdez to Congress. And if you're still not convinced, here's the final thing I'll say about Claire Valdez. She's a great candidate because she has the policy platform and communicates that platform with voters through various media methods. I'll provide a link to one of her many interviews she has done so you can hear her explain her policy vision in her own words. After this video, go visit the Bituation Room, the channel of Francesca Fiorentini, and watch her Candidate Corner interview with Claire Valdez. Francesca has been doing fantastic work spotlighting great progressive candidates on her Candidate Corner series. Next, in the 9th District, the race has 3 candidates running. I would recommend against re-electing the corrupt establishment incumbent. So of the 2 remaining options, who is the better candidate? The legitimate progressive candidate and secular lefty approved candidate is Joshua Bristol. Unfortunately, at this time, there are no endorsements by the trusted groups in this race, most probably just assuming the incumbent will win. But Joshua had put in the work to get on the ballot and has a great progressive platform. If the voters want to elect a real progressive to fight for the policies we need, Joshua is the candidate who can be trusted to do so in this race. The other candidate, while I normally wouldn't even waste the time to talk about them and would just move on, their campaign policy page provides an important example of what to look for and avoid in candidates. Once again, this is on the topic of healthcare. On the policy page of Michael Goldfarb, he has a small 2-sentence description for universal healthcare. Some pages would just leave it at that, and the vagueness of that statement alone should concern you. But if you click on the link, it goes to another page with more information, a full policy proposal he published on May 24th, so very recently. Towards the end of his policy, and after effectively describing a public option, he then ends his proposal with the question, why not Medicare for all? Yeah, why not? Well, he goes on to lie about what Medicare for all is. Medicare for all is a single-payer health insurance program. It does not make the government responsible for all health care. It makes them the single payer for medical services provided. How that is done specifically is what our Congress will need to work on and agree on something. But that is not Mike's argument. He then goes on to make the same bad faith argument the liberal Senate candidate in Michigan, Mallory McMorrow, has used to explain why she doesn't support Medicare for all or single payer. This terrible argument that because Republicans could be in charge of government, therefore, we can never aspire to have good government programs. If we have universal programs that address the needs of the people, Republicans would never be elected to public office again. The argument by McMorrow and Goldfarb is terrible, and these are terrible candidates. Voters in New York's 9th District, do the right thing and support and vote for Joshua Bristol. The 10th District is another race with huge momentum in it for the progressive challenger, and a race with a very important lesson in it. The race is currently just between the approved candidate, Brad Lander, and the corrupt incumbent. When Brad entered the race, despite the other candidates already being in the race and some of them even having decent policies, they knew the excitement and enthusiasm is with Brad Lander, and to help Brad, they dropped out to allow voters to consolidate around Brad to defeat the incumbent. And it makes sense because, after all, Brad Lander is probably somewhere in the top 5 of New York's favorite politicians. Somewhere after Zoran Mamdani and AOC, but not too far behind. There might be other popular New York politicians, but no one else comes to mind for me. What helps Brad Lander, in addition to him being a talented politician and fighting for the right policies, what gave his political career national attention was his cross-endorsement in the New York City mayor's primary race with Zoran Mamdani. Ever since then, Brad Lander has been working to help inform the public and bring attention to the crimes of ICE and calling for their abolishment. Brad Lander is currently endorsed by Our Revolution, Progressive Victory, and the Working Families Party. I hope the voters in the 10th will send another great progressive to Congress. In the 11th District, this is currently a Republican-held seat. The best Democratic candidate running is Michael DeCillis. A decent policy platform, but he doesn't have any endorsements by the trusted groups at this time. In 2024, the Republican incumbent won with 63.8% of the vote. The seat may not be easy to flip, but Michael DeCillis is the best candidate running in the district to make the attempt. Next, in New York's 12th District, things get very messy again. The 78-year-old geriatric incumbent decided not to run for re-election, so that's good. The problem is now the fact that there are 9 candidates running for the seat. The good news is that of these 9 candidates, there are 3 decent candidates I recommend you choose from. To guarantee a victory for the people, it's preferable the voters rally around one of these candidates. The first is Alex Bors, endorsed by Our Revolution. The next is Laura Dunn, endorsed by Citizens Impeachment. The third is Nina Schwalbe, who isn't endorsed by any of the trusted groups yet, but had such a decent policy platform, matching the quality of the other 2 candidates, that it didn't feel right to not approve her. The winning candidate will be whoever has the better ground game and volunteer network. When looking at the money, we can see Alex Bors has raised a considerable amount. The only candidate to have more money is Conway, a con artist whose whole message is he isn't Donald Trump. Voters in the 12th District, you can do so much better than Conway. Don't allow that dipshit to buy a congressional seat. I suppose I would vote for Alex Bors and support the Our Revolution candidate, but there are 9 candidates that will split the votes of several ideological groups. If not Alex, then hopefully at least Nina or Laura will earn your vote. If the vote is split and a centrist or liberal candidate wins, there is one independent candidate deserving of an honorable mention. That is Karen Ortiz, who is endorsed by Citizens Impeachment and Track APAC. We'll see how the primary results happen, but if Alex, Laura, or Nina don't win the nomination, it might be worth to remember Karen Ortiz. In the next race, we have another exciting Democratic challenger. There are 9 candidates running, including the corrupt incumbent. The candidate voters in the 13th District should support is Democratic Socialist Darializa Chevalier, a great candidate with the progressive platform and endorsed by Justice Democrats, Our Revolution, PALPAC, and Track APAC. She also lists endorsements on her campaign page from the Sunrise Movement, Progressive Victory, the local New York City DSA, and the New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani. As with Claire Valdez in the 7th District, I would like to see the national DSA endorse Darializa, and the Working Families Party also lacks an endorsement in this district. It'd be great to see them rally behind Darializa too. She's the best candidate running in this district, and I hope a majority of primary voters agree and vote for Darializa Chevalier on June 23rd. The next race is the only New York district with an incumbent worth re-electing, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. One of the first Justice Democrats elected to Congress back in 2018, and one of the first modern-day grassroots campaigns to successfully win against a well-funded incumbent Democrat. Back in 2018, AOC won the Democratic Party's nomination with 56.7% of the primary vote, a difference of only 4,000 votes out of a little less than 30,000 total decided that election. In the general election, as a non-incumbent former bartender, working-class candidate, she won with an impressive 78.2% of the vote, despite the losing incumbent staying on the ballot as the Working Families Party candidate. Shame on you, Working Family Party, for allowing that. Shame. Joe Crowley was the number 3 Democrat in terms of seniority and fundraising in the House at that time. But money doesn't vote. This political newcomer out of nowhere beat him because of her progressive policy platform she communicated to voters and the hard work AOC and her campaign did to earn the trust of the voters. While AOC is not perfect, like every person, she has made some decisions that occasionally even I will find questionable. She is still the best candidate running in New York's 14th District, and one of the best, if not the best member we have in terms of popularity with the U.S. public. That is one of the reasons why it's not surprising seeing her lead in the 2028 presidential polling. As a quick aside, I would support her if she runs, and probably will run. I'm unsure of other progressive leaders we have that would consider running and be potentially successful. I know there will be several governors running, but none of them inspire me. And Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, don't even bother. It'll be a failed campaign. Just stay as governor. In terms of other people I would support, Nina Turner comes to mind if she would run. She is a former state senator from Ohio and helped Bernie Sanders with his presidential runs. She has similar policy positions, but less name recognition than AOC. My strategic advice to AOC is to run for Chuck Schumer's Senate seat in 2028, and she could potentially become the Senate Majority Leader if she chooses that path. That race I see as a guaranteed win for her, while I am not convinced AOC could win a presidential primary. But she may also be the left's best choice. When it's time, it will be her decision to make, and either option still leaves the question of who would then fill her seat in the 14th District. But that is still 2 years away, and who knows if we'll still even have a society by then. For now, voters in the 14th District keep electing AOC to Congress. Assuming Democrats do take back the House in 26, then I have 2 suggestions for who should become Speaker of the House. And no, neither of them is Hakeem Jeffries. Either AOC or Ro Khanna. Those are probably the 2 best leaders we have in the House, but we'll need far more progressives elected to give them the support to make that happen. Of the approved groups, AOC is endorsed by only 3 of the 10, which are Justice Democrats, Our Revolution, and the Working Families Party, which I'm glad they now support AOC, and hope more groups decide to as well. While not endorsed by Track APAC, AOC does have a clean record as she doesn't accept any corporate PAC money. I can only assume she's not endorsed by Track APAC and PALPAC too for that matter, because of her mixed record on sending money and weapons to Israel on occasions, decisions that I also don't agree with. But I don't know her full voting history, but if memory is correct, it's mixed. Again, she is not an incumbent with a perfect record, which of course is preferable, but doesn't exist. I would also add that as she does pursue her path for the presidency, she needs to continue improving her leadership abilities if that's what she wants to do. That means breaking more with the establishment, Stop playing nicely with them. They don't give you anything in return. When she was asked about Choykot Chakrabarty's race in California's 11th district, it was incredibly disappointing listening to her weak-ass response and not endorsing Choykot. Back in 2018, he had helped AOC get into office and became her chief of staff. He's endorsed by Justice Democrats, a group that AOC, again, was an original candidate of and is still a member of. His primary in California is happening on June 2nd, which hasn't happened yet at the time of this recording, so I don't know what the results will be yet, but I can only hope he wins, and I can't stress enough how disappointing AOC's non-endorsement in that race was. If AOC wants to be the leader of the progressive movement that Bernie has been building up since his 2016 run, that means doing more confrontational actions that challenge the establishment and supporting more progressive challengers against incumbents, just like how AOC got into office back in 2018. That is the only way we are going to get progressive legislation passed and improve lives. I trust the voters in New York's 14th district will re-elect AOC. I just hope we can continue to trust AOC to make the correct policy and political decisions. The next approved candidate is Michael Blake, running in the 15th district. He is endorsed by Progressive Victory and Track APAC. Of the 6 candidates running to replace the corrupt incumbent Richie Torres, Michael Blake has the best policy platform and is the candidate fighting to improve our lives. Voters in the 15th district, please vote for the best candidate on your ballot on June 23rd, Michael Blake. In the 17th district, of the 6 candidates running, the approved candidate is Effie Phillips-Staley, another fantastic candidate with a bold progressive platform and is endorsed by Our Revolution, Track APAC, and the Working Families Party. This is currently a Republican-held district in which the incumbent won in 2024 with 52.1% of the vote. Difference of about 24,000 votes. Difference could have been less had the Dem nominee and the Working Families Party nominee been the same candidate. Oops. Voters in the 17th district can avoid that mistake this time, but only if the primary voters support Effie Phillips-Staley on June 23rd. In the 21st, this is another Republican-held district where 5 candidates are running in the Democratic primary. While none of the candidates have endorsements by one of the trusted groups, Stuart Amoriell had the best policy platform of those running. In 2024, the Republican Elise Stefanik won with 62% of the vote. Between her not running for re-election and the fact MAGA Republicans are literally destroying every part of the economy in this country, this district could be flipped despite the 24 points needing to flip it. If Stuart Amoriell wins the primary, he's probably the best candidate to flip the district in November. In the 23rd district, this too is currently held by a Republican, but the incumbent Nick Langworthy is running for re-election. In 2024, he won with 65.8% of the vote. While this district would be equally difficult to flip, there is a Democratic candidate among the 4 running that met the secular lefty approval. Aaron Gies' policy page isn't among the best I have seen, but it's good enough and certainly better than the 3 other candidates he's running against. No endorsements from any of the trusted groups at this time, but if Aaron wins the primary, he's the best candidate to attempt to flip the district in November. For the 24th district, very similar story as the 23rd. Currently, it's held by a Republican who is also running for re-election. In 2024, Republican Claudia Tenney won with a similar 65.6% of the vote. There are only 2 candidates running in the Democratic primary. Neither were endorsed by any of the trusted groups, and both candidates had weaker policy pages when compared with many of the other approved candidates. Even so, I still decided to approve Alissa Ellman. Her statement on healthcare was very weak, and I would hope to see her support single payer. However, her statement on supporting the PRO Act and other pro-union policies, I decided to give her the spotlight. She may not flip the district, but Alissa Ellman is the candidate with the best chance to flip it. The final New York district with an approved candidate is Robin Wilt, running in the 25th district. She and 2 other Democratic candidates are attempting to unseat the corrupt Democratic incumbent, Joseph Morell. Morell takes money from corporations, APAC, and like many of the other Democratic incumbents who are also endorsed by the Working Families Party in New York, with the exception of AOC, they failed to support Representative Al Green's impeachment efforts of Trump last year. The voters in the 25th district have the opportunity to elect a better candidate with a progressive platform that includes impeachment. Robin Wilt is endorsed by Citizens Impeachment, and unfortunately that's all at this time. Regardless, she is the best candidate running, and hopefully the voters in the 25th district will agree. And there you have it, folks, the secular lefty approved candidates for New York. Replacing incumbents is no easy task, but many of us know it has to be done. While there are many great candidates running for Congress, there could have been a few more. If you are an American who complains why there aren't better candidates on the ballot, but never participate in the primary process or help candidates to get on the ballot, you're part of the problem. At least for 2026, in New York's primary elections, there is a potential of 15 additional progressive public servants to join AOC in Congress. They probably all won't win, but what do you think? Is there any important information I missed? And who will you be voting for? Let me know in the comments. As stated earlier, New York will not be voting alone on June 23rd. The other two states are Maryland, which has already been reviewed, and Utah, the topic for our next episode. The last state voting in June is Colorado on the 30th. Stay tuned for more primary info on those upcoming states. Be sure you're subscribed and ring that bell to be notified of my newest videos. If you found anything I said in today's video useful, please give it a like and share it everywhere. Together, we can make Americans more educated, and hopefully that will result in better election outcomes. Until the next video, please consider checking out my other work on this channel. Any additional watch time and shares will help the channel reach more people and is greatly appreciated. Thank you again for listening. Take care.